Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm glad to have you. If you're returning, like I said, welcome back. I thought I would talk about, some things that I've never forgotten that have stuck with me throughout my career that hopefully helped me to be a better nurse. I used to do wound care many, many years ago, and because I was the regular wound care nurse, the nurses on the floor weren't as familiar with the treatments. So when state came in the building, I had to come in on my day off one day, and as you can see, I have long hair, and throughout my career I've had long hair, short hair, different things, but I did braid my hair, but it was really long, and I was doing a treatment with state, and I passed the treatment, but the only thing that they said to me is that my hair had gotten into my field very nearly. And so when I am doing hands-on patient care or wound care or anything where I might get messy, I do pull my hair up, because I remember thinking about the contents of what was in my field and what the wound looked like that I was dressing. And I see a lot of nurses have long hair, and I think that's great. But me personally, I know when I am just doing day-to-day nursing stuff, I maybe am wearing my hair down, but when I am in the field and doing hands-on care, I definitely need to pull my hair back so that it's not getting in my field and contaminating my field or getting contaminated. You don't want to take that stuff home with you to your family, and you don't want to bring stuff to your patient. You certainly don't want to give your patient an infection from you, and you certainly don't want to get infected from your patient, whichever the case may be. So that's one thing that I think about a lot. When you're a nurse and you're doing wound care, it's often face to butt. Okay, let's be real. You're getting down at a level where your face is very near the wound and you're very close to what you're doing. I've had very few times when I'm not pretty close to a sacral wound when I'm doing wound care. You know, when you're taking care of patients, sometimes you're even getting down to that level, maybe even on your knees to do the treatment. So being a nurse is, finding yourself in strange positions, and you just want to make sure that you're maintaining your field whenever you're doing those treatments. So that's one thing I remember. And I worked in a facility where a patient had COPD. And we were always told that the CNAs cannot readjust the oxygen. But, many years ago, CNAs who had been CNAs for years often felt comfortable to do that. And I'm not saying that they're not knowledgeable or capable of putting oxygen tubing in the nose or turning on the machine. But truly, that is a medication and is a nursing responsibility. And the reason I learned how dangerous it could be to have someone doing it that maybe is not as informed, and maybe you should inform your CNAs, because as nurses, we have a duty to educate our CNAs, our patients, the patients' families. We have a responsibility to make sure that we're explaining why things are the way they are, rationale. Some people are just not going to listen to you regardless. But we had a patient with COPD, and as you know, when a person has COPD, they can't breathe. And turning up the oxygen is not going to really help in that situation. In fact, it can be harmful if you turn the oxygen up too high. And a patient, it was not my patient, but I was aware of the patient because, like I said, I was a wound care nurse in the facility. The patient did pass away, and the CO2 level was significantly elevated. And the doctor was furious, because she had actually come in and seen the oxygen level up on this patient and given education to the nurses on that unit. So it's really important with COPD that you educate them about the importance of not turning their oxygen up too high. I have seen orders for high flow oxygen for COPD, and in a hospital setting, those things are different. Hospitals have different monitoring capabilities. They have different oxygen delivery systems. They have the ability to do things that we really shouldn't be doing in the home, and potentially in a skilled nursing facility. We don't always have the same monitoring ability in a skilled facility. Now, this happened many years ago. I mean, more than 20. But it stuck with me in my brain about COPD, and so I'm very good about educating my COPD patients, the ones who have this, that I'm not looking to see their oxygen in the upper 90s. That's not, my goal for them. Some COPD classic patients are really not feeling short of breath and are comfortable at, 88%. And when I was a new nurse, I used to panic when I would see it go below 90. I wanted to bring my patients above 90. But over the years, doctors have done a lot of education with me and with other nurses around me, and just in general. And in nursing school, we also learned about this. People with COPD are used to, their bodies have compensated for their lower oxygen levels. So if you give them that higher oxygen level, basically you're going to knock out their drive to breathe. And it's not a good situation. So some other good tips that I've learned for patients with COPD over the years is the devices that they can use. My brain's not thinking. I always want to call it a lyric, but that's not what it is. But it sounds like a musical. It looks like a green pickle. They blow into it. It's like blowing up a balloon. And they have some cool ones now that are like little square boxes. I remember when we first got the devices, they were so expensive that you had to get a lot of permission, and the respiratory team had to give it to the patient. But I have seen it give COPD patients a lot of benefit to use those devices. And the incentive spirometers, it's good to educate and encourage them to use those devices. I apologize, my brain's just not thinking about that today. And another thing that I have really kept with me is the way that I speak and the way that I'm perceived. I tend to have a very expressive face about maybe things that are going on in my day that have nothing to do with the patient. I have a hard ability, it's hard for me to hide my emotions on my face, and I've actually had patients call and ask if I had a problem with them or if there was something wrong because I was maybe shorter or I was maybe not as pleasant as usual. And yes, we're people and we have things happening in our lives, but we're also nurses, and our duty is to our patients when we're in that mode. When we're nurses, we can't be allowing our patients to be focused on us, because it's really about the patient and we're there to focus on the patient. We're important. We're important as nurses, and we're people and we have feelings. But I guess the thing that I have learned over the years is that I need to leave my personal feelings at the door when I come to work. And the hardest thing for me is leaving my work feelings at the door when I come home. It is really hard for me, and it's something that I've struggled with over the years, if I've had a hard day at work, to come home and not give that to my family. So just like I have a hard time not showing my patient if I'm having a hard time in my personal life, I will not necessarily tell them what's going on in my personal life. But there have been days, when you get in a rush and you're just behind no matter what you do in a day, and you just feel kind of defeated. I have a hard time sometimes not rushing myself even more. So, when you're with a patient, even though there is a time constraint on that visit or that activity that you're doing with them, you don't want them to feel like they're not important too, because every patient should feel like they're just as important as the last or the next. And there are times when I have had to slow myself down and correct myself and realize that I'm not giving the best possible care that I could be giving with this attitude and this style of communication. So another thing that I've learned over the years is that it is really important to plan your day and also be able to readjust. I am one of those people that may panic initially when something changes in my schedule. Is hard for me, but I am getting a little bit better at that over the years. Probably better than I was in my 20s, let's say. In my 20s, when I was a nurse, I'm pretty sure I didn't adapt to change at all. I do have a little bit of a moment still where I'm like, what? And I panic maybe, but then I am able to bring myself back down, and I don't do it in front of a patient or anything, but privately, I certainly do not like change. But as a nurse, it's important to have an idea how your day should go. Otherwise, it will be very chaotic and you will be chasing your tail all day long. You do need to know what's important, what has to be done, what might be able to wait until the next day if things get hectic, and you need to know what things can be changed if something comes up. Because in hospice and home health, probably, with people, things change. So you have to be flexible. Although you have a set plan in motion and you have an idea of the time frame of how your day should and could go on a good day, you also have to be prepared for the idea that it's not going to go that way. And then you won't be upset when it doesn't. And you'll have a game plan. If A, B, or C happens, then I can move this patient to another day. And it's always important to communicate that to your patients as well. Communication is key. You can't just be showing up at their doors when you're doing home hospice. You really do have to give them a time frame of when to expect you. Because as I've learned, sometimes families, and we encourage them to do this, use that time to run an errand because they've been caring for their loved one without any assistance and they need a break. And we are offering them that break. So it's really important to communicate with your families. That's something that maybe I always haven't been the greatest at, but it is something that I've worked on getting better at. And a lot of people text in this day and age, so that's been great for me because calling on the phone isn't always, people don't always answer their phones, but they will text you. So it's important to make yourself a schedule and be prepared to change it. That's a big thing that I've learned over the last 4 years doing hospice. I think that that's made me more flexible, even though I still have a hard time with some of those changes. The other thing that I've learned is that you really have to protect yourself, cover your behind. CYA, that's what they tell me all your life, and that is the truth. If you didn't chart it, you didn't do it. And I have been guilty over the years of not taking credit for something that I did in fact do. I have thankfully not ever had to answer for those little things that I didn't chart, but I am aware that that is a possibility. And so it is really important that if you do something that you should document it and take credit for it. And if something happens that's not correct, you also need to take accountability for that. You can't cover it up or hide it or try to pretend that it didn't happen. You have to take accountability for it. You have to notify the right people because that's part of covering your behind as a nurse. You are liable for so many things legally. So it's really important, I've learned, to acknowledge when you make a mistake, which I am one of those people that does not want to make a mistake. And when I have made a mistake, it was awful for me. And I guarantee you I never made that mistake twice. But mistakes do happen. They do. One of the biggest mistakes I made, and it didn't come to anything serious, thankfully, was giving the wrong dose of insulin. And I really do not allow people to distract me when I'm at a medicine cart. It's been a while since I've been at a medicine cart, but when you are giving medications, there is an emergency, you should not stop what you're doing to talk to people. If you are in the middle of drawing up medicines that are critical, and really, you don't want to give the wrong medication at the wrong time, you don't want to give the wrong dose, you don't want to go the wrong route, you really want to be paying attention to your MAR, be aware of what your patient is taking, and be mindful of what you're doing when you're doing it. And so you need to cover your behind by doing what's right all the time. I had a DON say that if you do it the right way all the time, if you do it the correct way all the time, and this doesn't mean being perfect, okay? When I'm saying doing something the correct way, I'm not saying that the by the book way is the only way that's correct, okay? If you are doing something correct that is not going to be able to be judged by state, when state is not in the building, you don't have to think about it when they come in the building. Am I doing this correct? Because you know you're doing it correct when they come. And that's something that plays in my mind. And I will tell you, I'm one of those people that my husband likes to call me a lawyer because that kind of stuff sticks in my brain. what's right and what's wrong. I have a really strong sense of what's right and what's wrong, and I really try to do what's right. And I really feel bad if I can't give it my 100%. Again, I'm not saying that there is not more than one way to do something. I'm saying that if you do it impeccably to your best ability and you don't make dangerous shortcuts, you're not going to get in trouble for doing it. You're going to be giving your patients good care. And I think as nurses, it's very important that we give impeccable care and that we have impeccable character, because the community sees us. They see us when we're not in our nursing uniform, and they see us when we're in our nursing uniform. And it really makes a difference when you're in the community how people view you. I'm not saying you shouldn't live your life and do your thing, because I think everyone should live their life and do their thing. But just accountability. Cover your butt. Always cover your butt. Always make sure that you're taking credit for what you did, and if you didn't do something, that you're acknowledging that and contacting the correct people. And that's not to say that you'll never get disciplined in your nursing career, because it happens. I had to do a federal survey at the facility that I worked at as a wound care nurse, and it was terrifying for me. And I will tell you, the patient had 40 wounds, and that's not an exaggeration. And the protocol in our facility at that time, years ago, we were new and up and coming with this wound protocol in this facility, and I was one of the pioneers in it. And one of our protocols was that when we did a dressing change, we would measure that wound and document it with each dressing change. I'm pretty sure people have gotten away from doing those measurements every time, and now they're more like on a weekly schedule, or unless something significant has happened and the wound looks different. But at that time, we measured each wound, and I got through every glove change and every hand sanitizer between the glove changes and explaining what I was doing to the patient. And then there was a spot of urine on a pad, no bigger than a quarter. And what I should have done was grabbed a CNA to help me. But I've changed pads. I will change my patients. I'm not above doing that as a nurse. If I come in and a pad's wet, I'm going to change it, because I'm already in there rolling the patient around, and it doesn't make sense to go get the CNA. But in this instance, under the pressure, I should have gotten help, because what I didn't do for this little spot of urine was change my gloves after I wiped the patient's skin to put in the clean pads. After I took out the dirty pads, I did not change my gloves. And do you know, the federal surveyors, after being in a room with me for an hour and a half, they dinged me for that little spot of pee where I didn't change my gloves. And I've never forgotten that since either. I don't touch side rails with my gloves. I don't pull up covers with my dirty gloves. I take those gloves off after I do something dirty and put clean ones on to do something clean, because that stuck in my brain, that one incident. And do you know, I got written up for it. And do you know, I did not sign that write-up. I felt harassed in that moment, simply because I had been in that room for an hour and a half, and they were looking for something. They couldn't find something until that minute. And I feel like after an hour and a half of wound care, I probably should have deferred to help and said, hey, I'm really hot. I need to get some help. I need to gather some things, and just cleared my thoughts before I did that, because I think I was already flustered and I made a mistake. So again, I've made mistakes. I've been disciplined throughout my career, not many times, because I pride myself on not getting in trouble. I'm that kid that doesn't want to do it wrong, but I take it to heart when I do it wrong. And so I would say, again, always cover your butt. That's my soapbox. And what are some things that you've learned throughout your career that just, they stick in your brain and you've never forgotten? What is something that you learned through trial by fire? I would love to hear about it in the comments. And if you like my content, then I would ask that you like, subscribe, and follow, and share it with other people. Maybe they have things to say too, but I would love to hear more about your nursing experiences. And I really thank you for watching and giving me your time. I hope to see you soon.